evening, triathlon fans and athletes around the world. My name is Philip O'Connor and we are bringing you Norseman live from here at Aker Biomarine in Oslo. Behind me here in the far, far distance is race general manager Dag Oliver. He'll be taking your questions this evening about cold water swimming, and if you send them to him via the Facebook page, they will magically appear on the screen in front of me. We're talking about a very, very specific subject this evening, that of cold water swimming. We always say we'd rather be swimming in Eidfjord, so we're going to take that up this evening. To help me get the bones of this information here, we have Jonny Hisdal, a physiologist who has competed 11 times, if I'm not mistaken, in the Norseman extreme triathlon, the most extreme triathlon on the face of the earth. And we also have Jorgen, who is responsible for the safety of all the athletes in the race. Gentlemen, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us here this evening. If I could start with you, Jorgen, your responsibility is the safety of the athletes, right? So the cold water swimming, the first thing we do is we get in the water at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's over 3 kilometers of swimming. How do you make sure that everybody survives that particular swim?
Well, we have a very good and skilled medical crew and safety people on the course. So we are supported by lots of doctors and nurses and paramedics, and also the Red Cross. That is very, very vital and important for the safety on the race. Mm. So yeah, that's a very short brief of the safety on the race. Yeah.
I know the Norseman organisation is very proud of how well they take care of the athletes out on the course there. Yep. But I mean, one of the things when I first became involved in this race was the word fjord is not good for sort of people from outside of Scandinavia, right? Because fjords tend to be ice water, tends to be very, very cold. So how do you decide if it's okay for people to get in the water at all at 5 o'clock in the morning?
Oh yeah, you start by asking the bone of the hardest question in the first. That's yeah. Right. Well, actually, I take it a little back to the start of the project, because in 2015 we were Jonny and me were arriving a few days ahead of the race start, as we always do, to check that everything is okay. And we measured the water temperature, and in 2015 it was 10 degrees. And as we were standing there, we had been on Norseman for many years, but that was probably the coldest we ever had during the Norseman history. And we really wasn't sure if that was safe to have 250 athletes swimming in the icy cold fjord. And if you and me were going down to the ocean here now and going to dip in 10 degrees water, that will be okay. That will not be a problem. Okay, we will be a bit cold, but we would manage. But sending 250 athletes to swim for an hour, or some of them swim for more than 2 hours in the fjord, that's a quite different challenge. And to be responsible for that it's a tough task. So we have to, of course, take that very, very serious. Okay. So we really didn't know, and we were checking out the literature and the science literature, and to see if anyone could tell us if this was okay or not. But there wasn't anything. So we did the thing that we could at that day. We tested for ourselves. Yep. So Jonny and me, we did go like James Bond style. We swallowed a pill that could measure our body temperature. Yep. And then we were carried up by a boat to the race start of Norseman, and we jumped into the fjord in 10 degrees. And and we swam. And the minute we jumped into the fjord, we were thinking, oh, might not be a very good idea, but we did swim the whole race course, just Jonny and me. So then in 2015, we decided we have to shorten the swim. So we did the half swim that year.
So you cut the distance down to 1.5, 1.6 kilometers then?
Yeah, we did. So at that time I was working as my main job was a rescue paramedic in the air ambulance. Yep. So that's what I have been doing for about 10 years. Yep. And then Jonny said, Jorgen, you should really do some real science on this, and you should start doing a PhD on this. And I was a little bit, I've been, like jumping out of helicopters and rescuing people in avalanches and
it's a lot more fun than reading books, my friend.
And then Jonny suggests that I should do a PhD, which is studying and researching and sitting and writing stuff, but it's not like that at all. So he convinced me to do that, and now I've been doing that for a few years.
We'll get to the research that you've undertaken in a minute, because that's fascinating, and it is all about the cold water swimming. So the athletes who are taking part, and indeed those of you who are going to be watching the race live online at home in August, we'll learn an awful lot of very good information here. But I'm going to turn to Jonny now for 1 second and ask you the question: what happens to the body when it's in the water and it's 10 or 11 degrees for an hour? What happens? Does it start to shut down? How does it protect itself?
I think it's different phases. The first phases is when you jump into the water and you got the cold shock, which is very tough to the body. Your heart rate increase, your blood pressure increase, your blood vessels in the skin constrict.
You scream a little bit,
You scream maybe a little bit, you hyperventilate. So the first phase is pretty tough. And after that, your body temperature will probably stay stable for some minutes, but then it will start to drop if you are not protected enough, and then it will drop steadily until you leave the water. And it will even probably also decrease after you have left the water for some while. But to check that out, we need to measure how it works, and because it's not that much research done during swimming in that cold water in healthy people, volunteers.
And you'd have to think that these are sort of high-level athletes. You're not talking about people who train just once or twice a week. These are people who train very, very hard to take part in the Norseman Extreme Triathlon. What effect does it have on the organs, on the heart, on the liver, on the kidneys? Do they slow down as well?
I think the most dangerous effect may be the shock in the beginning, because then your blood pressure will increase. And if you have some underlying heart disease, it may even be dangerous, the first part. It's very seldom something happens, but that's at least a dangerous part. And if you get too cold under a certain level, it also may be serious hypothermia that may be dangerous.
As we can see on the banners here behind us, advertising the Isklar Norseman Extreme Triathlon. This is the boat. This is where people jump in to start the race in Eidfjord at 5 o'clock in the morning. Jorgen, we've seen footage last year, live footage of people being sprayed with water. I'm assuming that's not a hot shower before they get in the water, right?
No, it's not a hot shower. That's seawater, actually. It's the same temperature as seawater, or it is seawater. And that is to prepare them for this cold shock and hopefully to avoid the cold shock. So that's something that through our research we found out that is very helpful and very important for the safety of the athletes. So most of the athletes do go through this shower. We encourage them a lot to go through this ice cold shower.
Those who don't regret it.
They will. And before we did this research, lots of the athletes was pouring hot water into their wetsuits, but that's not really a good idea because you want to get adjusted to the cold. So we'll do that.
It's not like, I suppose, the temperature is not like food. Whatever you eat, you're going to use over time. But as soon as you jump into the water, your temperature is going to change. If we talk a little bit briefly about the research that you've undertaken, right? You mentioned in 2015, 10 degrees in the water, you had to cut down the length of the swim because you literally didn't know what was going to happen to people if they spent an hour in that water. You undertook some research to find out. How did you go about researching this subject?
We've done several studies since that, but the first thing we did was have 20 triathletes swimming in 10 degrees water here in the fjords in Oslo in the autumn, and we measured the core temperature constantly, and that was under extremely controlled environment. We had doctors and paramedics on the shore all the time and then swim back and forth on the shore. And we were measuring the core temperature on 20 of the athletes. And then we can see how the temperature is changing during the event.
How do you measure the core temperature?
Well, what we do now is using a pill that is you swallow, and it's in the
intestine,
yeah,
or the
in the
stomach?
intestines, yeah. And it sends via a Bluetooth or something like that.
Yeah, wireless signal.
A signal, and we can read it out. We can read it out during the event by holding a device into the body, or we can read it out after the event. And of course, on Norseman, we read it out after the event. We don't stop the athletes during the race, but we read
So
it
what
out
you
after.
do then is like you bring your reader and you download all so that data would be the time and the temperature measured at different times throughout the day.
So we can measure the pill is storing the temperature every second minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And tell me, the research that you've done so far on those 20 athletes and the other athletes at Norseman, what has that shown you? How quickly does the body cool down in those temperatures?
Well, it do take some times before the core temperature start to fall. So that's what I told you. If you and me go down to the fjord now and dip, we will not get cold. We will feel a bit cold, but the core temperature will not drop. But swimming for let's say about half an hour and more in very cold water, then the temperature will start to drop. And there is a huge difference in body types because if you compare Jonny and me, Jonny will probably get much more cold than I am. Maybe will be because I'm a bigger guy, and that's. As you said, the Norseman athletes are very fit and healthy, so it's a bit in a hypothermic way. That's not very good, but
they don't have like the built-in insulation. Maybe
that's right. So they are a bit exposed to the cold. But that's the thing that we'll have looked at.
And if you mentioned then that that the temperature drops, but it's sort of gradual in the beginning. How quickly, once it does start to go down, how quickly does it drop?
It's very individual. So we really can't. I could tell you for one of the 20 athletes how much it dropped, but I can't tell you now exactly like a mean temperature at the moment. But we'll probably find that out. But I can't tell you now. But it will drop. In different rates for every athlete.
For different people.
It will.
Jonny, I'm just wondering, from a physiologist's point of view, is there anything that I can do when you come to wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning of the race and I get onto the boat and Jorgen sprays me with the seawater that's the same temperature as the water we're getting into? Is there anything else that I can do beforehand? But is there something I can eat? Is there something I can take to prepare my body for that? Or is it just a case of, it's an external factor, it's the temperature, and you just have to deal with it?
I think it's a lot of things you can do in before, and the most thing is that you can kind of do an acclimatization program for the cold water, and if you regular swim in cold water, then your body will react different after maybe 10 to 12 times in cold water. So you can prepare in that way. And the other thing is, of course, to have the right equipment. So you have a wetsuit that fits you well, and you can protect your head. And it's a lot of things you can do beforehand to get a better swim.
Of course, spring has just come to Northern Europe. We're coming to you tonight live from Aker Biomarine here. This is Norseman Live. We're talking about cold water swimming. A little bit later in August of this year, we're going to be running the Norseman Extreme Triathlon yet again. Simply the most extreme triathlon on the face of the earth, and you can watch it live on the internet. We have a couple of questions coming in now, but we're going to have a little question here. This is from Iron Man Michael, who is in Hong Kong, and he says it's way past his bedtime, but he's enjoying the show there. He's planning to arrive in Eidfjord 9 days before the race. He won't have a chance to practice cold water swimming before this, and he's going to do 4 or 5 swims before the race. Will that give him enough time to adjust, or should he also try to find some other types of cold water training?
If he's able to even to get a cold shower, is better than nothing. So you can shower in cold water a period before, and you will be better prepared. And if he arrive 9 days before in Eidfjord, it's also plenty of time to go to the water and start adapting to it.
Of course, one of the loveliest traditions that we have in the Norseman Extreme Triathlon is the Friday morning social swim, where the athletes take part.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, Jorgen, will you be taking part in that this year, or do you go for the social swim?
Yeah, I always go for the social swim.
You will be there?
Yeah, of course.
Jonny, it just struck me there. If we asked Michael in Hong Kong to have a cold shower instead of doing cold water swimming, how long would he need to stand in the shower under the stream of cold water so that he gets like the benefit that you're telling me about?
I think if you are in the cold shower for 5-10 minutes, you will get an effect.
Yep.
And it's probably also a good effect if you can repeat it for maybe every day.
Yeah.
For a 14 days period.
Over 14 days.
Yeah.
There you go, Michael, in Hong Kong, every day for 14 days. Cold shower every day for 14 days. And then when you do get to Eidfjord, we'll happily go swimming with you. Jorgen has already volunteered there. Jorgen, you're responsible for the safety of Michael and for everybody else who's going to be taking part in the race. What can you do from the safety boats when it's cold like that? How do you work out who's doing okay and maybe who needs a little bit of help out there? Maybe who shouldn't be in the water anymore?
Yeah, we know a lot about that from the emergency medicine that I've been working with before, and we used to think we see on TV, on films, on Baywatch and things like that people that are drowning are waving their hands, but they don't wave their hands when they are drowning. They're not capable of waving their hands at all. So what the kayakers and the Red Cross and us as a medical professional look for in the water is people that are laying still. Actually, that's our most important sign that we look for. And some of the people laying still can just lying there relaxing, but then the kayakers go out to them and just talk to them, and if they answer like normal answers, and everything okay. But if they don't answer very well, then we pull them out of the water straight away, because that's a first sign, a very vital sign of drowning, and being still in the water. And I'm not now talking about laying with your face down and like unconscious, but like apathic or not response very well in the water. Then
just sort of drifting or floating.
That's a very important and very dangerous sign, and the first sign of drowning actually. So that's what to look for, and that's also a good thing to have in your back of your head when you're out training with your buddies, and that's what you should look for. You shouldn't expect anyone to wave and shout for help, because they really,
that's not what happens.
That's not what. That's only on Baywatch.
Tell me, that situation there when people jump into the water. What I find fascinating is that in 2015, that you two guys went ahead and sort of just got in the water and you tested this out for yourself. What happens to you mentally when you get in that water? Because as I said, my reaction would be to scream a little and then wish I was somewhere else. You know. But did you find yourself, as you got tired, as you got colder, did you find your mental process changing at all?
I think the athletes are hugely very, very good prepared for swimming in cold water, because every year we just bang it into their head that the water is cold. So I think they are very well mentally prepared for cold water, and most of the athletes also have been swimming in the cold water to train in the cold water, at least the Nordic athletes, and I think almost everyone has been swimming in the cold water. But of course, racing that long distance, and also swimming that long distance, you will get mentally. You feel like giving up a few times during the race. I'm sure of that. But all the athletes, they know from November, I think it is, that they are into the race, and then they are just prepared for cold water, much wind on the Hardangervidda, a uphill up the Zombie Hill, and they're just so prepared, and they're full of adrenaline when they start the race. So mentally, I will say all of the athletes are very good prepared.
Jonny, you've done this 11 times, okay? Could I ask you, what was your worst experience of the swimming in Eidfjord? Was it in 2015?
No, I think it was in 2005, first time I participated.
That was the first time,
and then it was, the swim was moved out to Brimnes, I think, that year. And I remember still when I jumped into the water, it was dark and cold, and it was really scary.
Yeah.
So I think mentally it's also different phases. I think the first jump in the water,
Yeah.
if you don't take this cold shower, we didn't do that in 2005, then you get this cold shock, which is really tough.
Yeah.
And you will also experience that the water temperature will vary along the swim course because of all the fresh water coming down the different rivers.
Yeah.
And when you hit one of those cold spots, you think, oh, this is really cold.
Yeah.
But after a while, you may swim out of it and you get a little bit higher temperature for a while and then swim in a new cold part again.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to be aware that the temperature of the water will vary during the swim course.
Yeah. Jorgen, if I could ask you about the research that you've undertaken, could you just explain to me what you did in 2017 was last year's race? Because this research has been going on for some time. So did you have anything that you did there or anything that you found out there that's informing this year's race?
Yeah. In 2016, we did the blood samples of several of the athletes.
Yeah.
And in 2017, we did the core temperature of a lot of the athletes, the same thing as we did in 2015 here in Oslo. So we gave in 2017, we gave lots of the athletes these pills, and now we have temperature data from the whole race, which is very, very interesting to us. We are analyzing the data now, and it's very interesting. Another thing that was very, very good that we did in 2017 was going to Ø til Ø.
Yes.
In Utø.
Yep.
And we did it mainly because they are out and in of the water all the time, and it's pretty cold there in May. And Jonny and I went there, and we really didn't know that much about Ø til Ø before we came there. Yep. But they were so friendly, and that race was so amazing in many ways. So we're definitely going back there, and also the Michael and Mats, they have invited us back to some of the races to do more research there, because that was truly a remarkable experience just being there, not only for the research but also for the atmosphere and the people there at Ute.
For the viewers at home who haven't heard of Ø til Ø is a swim run race. Swim run is basically where you run and swim over islands. So it's not just with the triathlon, you get in, you start to the swimming part, and then when you get on dry land, you're on dry land for the rest of the race. Ø til Ø and swim run is completely different. You're in and out of the water the whole time, and there are some long swims there, maybe 2 kilometers, 1.7 kilometers, I think is one of the longer swims there. But then you get out and then you get in again. And I've actually seen those races. Now that we're talking about cold water swimming, there was a race in Germany a few years ago where the water temperature in the lakes was so low that we actually saw a lot of people who basically quit the race at that point because they were suffering from the kind of things that you gentlemen are explaining to me today.
Yeah, and that actually that is the race that Mats and Michael invited us to come to, the Thousand Lakes.
The Thousand Lakes race,
they wanted us to come there.
Yeah, did you attend that race? No, not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But we'll probably
get down to that one. That's a fascinating race and a beautiful part of the world as well. The sport of swim run is well worth watching. Yeah. We have a question in from Anders Olstad, and he asks, do you recommend using Vaseline or grease on exposed skin? So should you have a little bit of duck fat on there? Because it seems to work for the ducks, right?
It works for the ducks, but I doubt the effect on humans, actually.
Okay.
You get a lot of fuss on your goggles, and personally, I never used it.
Yep.
No, I see a lot of athletes use, but I have never used it, and I've tried it, but I don't find any good effect of it.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's something we recommend in our recommendations.
No.
But,
we will be having a closer look at some of the equipment in a little while. But is there any of these things? I've seen these people who swim the channel between England and France, and they swim, 26 English miles or whatever it happens to be. I'm assuming that that's, similar water temperatures. It's seawater, so it's maybe a little bit different. But, what do you need? Is there anything you can use? Any sort of grease or fat? There's nothing out there that's going to work.
I think that the most important thing for these channel swimmers is that they have quite a lot of subcutaneous fat.
Yes,
so
that's the fat that's just under the skin.
Fat, yeah, right? So that's actually, I think it's needed to be able to do it.
Yeah.
If you're really thin, long and thin,
Yeah.
you will have struggling with that kind of swimming.
Yeah, because of course, if we look at the sport of triathlon, and indeed extreme triathlons on a global basis, these things tend to happen in places that are an awful lot warmer than Norway in August.
Yeah.
So you're talking about places like Hawaii and in Australia and in California. So if you're a Californian athlete and you're watching this, having your lunchtime sandwich there in Santa Barbara or wherever you happen to be, and then you're coming here, you know, your body type and maybe your diet and the kind of warm weather training you do is not 100% suitable for what you're going to be doing here at Norseman.
No, it's not. And I've been racing myself in the like Cozumel and Nice, that is very warm,
Yeah.
and that will be the same thing for me. I have to adjust to the heat, and it's similar for the athletes coming from warm places. They have to adjust to the cold here. So,
Yeah.
taking showers and arriving early in Eidfjord, that's a really good idea to
Yeah.
adjust the body to the temperature.
Yeah, I think also that it's really important to be aware that how cold 10 degrees water is,
Yeah.
and also how steep the hills are. If you're not able to, or not used to bike or run in up steep hills,
Yep.
it's smart to just to test out how 10% incline is, how steep it really is.
There you go. There's a reason we call it an extreme triathlon, ladies and gentlemen. It is extreme. The temperature's extreme. The gradients are extreme. We're also getting an extreme amount of questions in on Facebook, which we are delighted for. And we have one here from Magnus Halid, who says, when preparing and training for this, do you recommend not doing more than 30 minutes of cold water swims on your own? And he's asking for if there's any idea of a safe limit and what to look for in your own body and take as a warning. Now, another question we have to ask you, Jorgen, is it smart to swim on your own at all?
That was my first thing to say, because you really shouldn't swim alone. We should mention the guides we have on the Norseman page about swimming in cold waters, because there was written a few years ago, but I think they still are very, very good and up to date, and that there you find some guidelines for swimming and training in cold water.
Yep.
But firstly, you really shouldn't swim alone. That's very important. And then you should wear a bright swim cap,
Yeah.
so you're easily spotted, or on one of these buoys that you can hang after you, so you are easily seen in the water. And you should swim near the shore.
Yep.
And also you could jumping out from a ferry right into the icy cold water is not the best way to enter cold water. So when you're training, you should gradually go into the water. That's a very good idea.
Try to avoid the cold shock and try
Yeah.
to get the body used
Yeah.
to it before you go in there.
Yeah.
Could I ask you at this stage, where is your research at the moment? Okay, you're doing this PhD, you're going to become a doctor through this research into cold water swimming and the effect on the body. Where are you now? How many years have you left? How much data have you collected?
Yeah, I will. It takes several years. You know, I will probably finish in about 3 or 4 years, and we have collected a lot of data, and I have all I need for my PhD. But our goal is to continue this research also after my PhD is finished. So we are about now to publish our first Norseman-related article. That's the swimming here in Oslo. It will be published in just a few months probably, and then we will publish more from Øtelø and also the other Norseman years, and we also are going to collect that data at this year's Norseman, and then we will do core temperature like we've done before, and we will do blood samples as well. The blood sample is something quite different from the temperature measuring studies we do, but it's what we are researching both for blood samples and core temperature is how the body is affected by extreme endurance events. So the blood samples and the core temperature is a bit on that track actually. So
we have a wonderful and growing audience here on Facebook for Norseman Live. Is there anything that you can share with them? Give them a little sneak preview of what it is that's going to be revealed in these articles. Is there any conclusions that you can share with them, especially for the athletes who are going to be taking part in August?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we already have been talking a little bit about, and that we know a lot from emergency medicine, is that when you are coming out of cold water, the body temperature is still going to decline.
Yeah.
So that means from the Norseman perspective, when you're biking up through Vøringsfossen and the first uphills,
First big hill,
you still will get colder actually, and that's a very I think that is very important for the athletes to know, and that is actually the reason that we wanted to go to Ötelö. Because we then as you said, the athletes sit out of and in of the water all the time, so we just wanted to see how this after drop that it's called will how we wanted to have a closer look on that. So when you are standing in the in Eidfjord in T1 and changing your clothes, I think all the athletes feel very cold there, but it's not just a feeling, they are actually cold and the temperature is going down.
I should point out at this point in time that, you know, there's no guarantee it's going to be 10 degrees. I mean, it could be beautiful weather, sun splitting the stones, and we could have people, you know, being affected by the sunshine later on. Hasn't happened before, but, you know, we live in hope of these things happening.
I actually collected data from the water temperature for all the years, of the last 10 years, and 10 degrees is very cold. It's not that cold normally. So.
No. So we'll hope for slightly better temperatures. So if anybody who's sitting there who has got their entry to this year's race, you know, don't be worried about this. You know, we'll let you know when you get to Eidfjord. Come to the Friday social swim and we'll sort that out. Jorgen, I'm going to say thank you very much indeed to you for taking part there. The best of luck with your research.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you in Eidfjord before the race starts. But we'll also talk to you in about a year's time where you can tell us what more you've learned. Thank you very much indeed. Johnny, stick on that microphone there because you're going to take me through some of the kit that is used to keep you warm in 10 degrees plus in the swim. And the first thing we're going to look at is this wetsuit here, right? This is a triathlon wetsuit. What am I looking at here?
Yes, I think the most important thing with your wetsuit is that it needs to fit you very well.
Yep.
So in that way you can keep the water inside the wetsuit.
Yep.
You heat it up and it will function very well when it comes to insulation.
Yep.
The other thing is that the thickness of the wetsuit should be as thick as it can be.
Yep.
And the wetsuits you buy on the market, they are allowed to use for triathlon. They are allowed to use in Norseman.
Okay, so the ones I think the regulations, I can't remember them offhand. Maybe you can help me there. It's 5 millimeters thick. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if it's 3 or 5 millimeter. That's the limit, but. Those you buy for triathlon, they are allowed to use in Norseman.
But if we say 5 millimeters thick, is that really a good level of protection, or is that just the bare minimum that you need to survive when you're out there in the water?
No, that's a good level of protection, but still you can be cold, of course. Yeah. And it depends how thin you are and how much subcutaneous fat you have on your body.
This is the first time I've ever heard a physiologist telling me that I need to be fatter to compete in something. That's never happened to me before. We'll have a look at some of the other things here because we had a question here from, it was Roman Potapov, who was asking any recommendations for a bald guy, and I'll be close to Roman's situation myself, but is this something you would recommend for everybody taking part?
Absolutely, Berdy. This is probably the best thing you can use when you swim. This will protect your head and also your neck.
Okay.
And a lot of your heat loss during swimming is from your head and
it goes through your
from
head.
The big arteries on your neck.
Yep.
So this is really good protection.
Yep. So I'm not going to put this over my head now because here at Aker Biomarine, they might think I'm trying to rob the local bank. So I'm not going to put this on right now. But I can tell you that it's very, very tight. It's very, very watertight. And as you can see, it extends down. So it's going to stop the water sort of getting down your back or your shoulders where your wetsuit is there.
Yeah.
So that provides pretty good coverage there. Okay.
And it's also important to try it on before you come to Eidfjord and maybe buy it so you can train with a little bit because your head will, it maybe affect your
vision or your ability to move, your range of movement, this kind of thing,
Yeah, so it needs to fit well, but it should not be too tight either.
Yeah, you need to be able to get it off when you're getting on the bike as well.
Yeah.
One of the things, we were talking a little bit earlier on about sort of fats and Vaseline and this kind of thing as well, right? Yeah. Here we have a pair of, they're kind of like small boots or booties kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Is this something you'd be a fan of in terms of, you know, covering up your hands and your feet in the water?
You are not. It's not legal to use anything on your hands.
Okay.
So that's not allowed. When it comes to the feet, the heat loss from the feet is very low because it's the blood flow in the feet are very low during cold water anyway.
Yeah.
So when it comes to core temperature, it would not have that much effect.
Yep.
if you feel that you can swim, have the same speed with these socks on, it's okay to use them. But if you feel that they slow you down, then you can skip them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, they are quite flexible here now. I just wondered if it would make any difference to the way you kick with your feet or anything like that. Have you used these before in the 11 times that you've taken part in the race?
I have maybe used that 3-4 times, and all the other years without.
Okay, and what would be the difference then? I mean, would these be in your bag now in Eidfjord in August, and you make a decision?
If the temperature is very low, I will have them in my bag, and I also wouldn't want to use them. But if it's not very cold, I will skip them.
You prefer to skip them?
Yeah, it would not have any big effect on the core temperature.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's the thing. Yeah. In terms of your own kit, if we look in your kit bag at the moment now, and we've had a look at the hat there, we've had a look at the boots there as well. When you go to buy a wetsuit, you know, you've known Jorgen for a long time, you've taken part in this research, we've spoken about it before. What do you look for in a wetsuit? Is it like the more expensive the better, or is it possible to get one?
I don't think it's that way. You know, it should fit very well on your body, so you need to try different sizes to be sure that they fit you very well. It should be flexible in your arms, so it doesn't give you that much resistance when you swim. And of course, the cheaper one, they are often thicker, and they may, when it comes to protection against the cold water, they may be as good as the expensive ones.
Did you ever find yourself in all of your experience in Norseman, did you ever find yourself in a wetsuit going, God, I wish I'd spent an extra few pounds or crowns, or did you ever, like, have you always been happy with the equipment that you've chosen to go with?
You know, when the wetsuit gets old, it's a chance that the zipper can go, and you can get hole in it and things like that. So I think it's smart to use some money on the wetsuit, so you have a good wetsuit when you are on the ferry. So you're not afraid that the zipper should break or something like that.
Just as you pull it up and it breaks, and then Jorgen starts spraying you with this water from the sea.
I have seen that happen.
That must be devastating mentally when that happens.
That's not very fun.
No.
And, if the water is very cold, it can actually ruin the whole race.
Two things, like what I'm taken from what you're saying there is that maybe if you're going to buy a new wetsuit, maybe you might want to do it in June or July, so that's pretty brand new when you go to the race. But you need to train in it first as well, right?
Yeah, you need to train it, and but you need to. It doesn't need to be that brand new, but it shouldn't be many years old and a lot of hole in it. Then that's not a good idea.
What's the oldest wetsuit that you've had in a Norseman? How many Norsemans have you used one wetsuit for? What's the record there?
I have only had 2 wetsuits my whole life, so...
It's good Norwegian quality there.
Yeah. No, so it of course depends how you treat them. If you are careful when you put them on, if you dry them, if you keep them away from the sunlight, and if you shower them in fresh water, you could probably keep them for years.
But if you roll them up in a ball and throw them in the trunk of your car...
and if you're not careful when you put them on, you get small tears in it, and things like that. Especially when you take them off, you get some stones or sand if you lay them on the ground. That may also damage them and ruin them. So.
Just one last question before we move on to the next section. When you get up in the morning of the Norseman, what do you eat to keep the cold away for the first hour that you're going to be swimming?
It's not that easy to eat something to keep the cold away, but one of the important things during Norseman is to get enough energy into your body. So you should eat what you normally used to eat and what your body wants. So I don't know what it is in English. Havregrynsgrøt?
That's porridge, oatmeal porridge.
Yeah, that's what I normally eat. But 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not that hungry, so very often I don't eat that much before I start the race.
I suppose the body isn't used to eating at 3 o'clock in the morning.
So it's better to eat when you have done the swim.
I don't know, 3 kilometres of swimming in 10-degree water on an empty stomach, I don't know if I'd be able to manage that. But another man who could tell us a little bit about some things that you can take to try to help you out, and indeed to help you recover from that 3-kilometre swim, is Dr. Andreas Berg Storsve, who is the Director of Research and Development here at Aker Biomarine. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much.
This is a pro here. He already has the microphone off to stick it under your nose. We were talking a little bit about wetsuits, we were talking a little bit about food, and with you we're going to talk a little bit about supplements. But just tell me first, what do you do here at Aker Biomarine in research and development?
Well, so basically we have a product, I can show it. This is krill.
Okay.
Krill oil,
more
specifically. And that's a really good source of omega-3s.
Okay.
A really good source of choline.
Yep.
And a really good source of astaxanthin.
Okay.
And I'll tell you more about the effects of those different
Please do.
compounds later on.
Yeah.
But basically what we're trying to do is to show the effects of our products
Yep.
on human health.
Okay.
So in the past, the focus has been on cardiovascular effects.
Yep.
So omega-3s and cardiovascular health is very strongly linked. So there is a sort of ongoing focus into cardiovascular health and omega-3s, obviously. The problem is that in the world there are very low consumption of fish, especially in the US and also in Asia and many countries in Europe. Norway is not that bad, but on a general scale there is a sort of global health problem in that people don't get enough omega-3s.
Okay.
And why is that a problem?
Yeah, I'm going to stop you there because when I got up this morning, I took a multivitamin, I took some magnesium and some zinc and some iron, and I looked at the omega-3 and I went, I'll skip that, as I have done for the last 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Now, the reason is because, sometimes it repeats on you and it doesn't taste that nice and that kind of thing. But you're telling me that I need to take that and that athletes...
It depends.
Okay. What does it depend on?
Do you eat fish?
Not as much as I should.
Yeah, so basically a supplement is good for you, an omega-3 supplement is good for you if you don't eat enough fish.
Okay.
It can add some benefits, but mostly it is about getting the nutrients you need.
Yeah.
So the problem with most people is that you eat way too much meat
Yep.
and not enough fish.
Yeah.
And why is that a problem? So basically omega-3s and especially DHA and EPA are really important components of your cells, so the cells in your body. And they ensure that the fluidity of the cells is proper,
Okay.
and also that signaling from cells is the way it should be. So basically the main problem is that you have too much omega-6 fatty acids and too little omega-3 fatty acids. And omega-6 fatty acids, they are pro-inflammatory.
Oh,
And
pro-inflammatory. Okay,
yes.
so they encourage
They
joints to
encourage inflammation. So you want to have a sort of balanced omega-6, omega-3 ratio there.
Okay.
So if you have too little omega-3s, you will have elevated levels of inflammation in your
Yep.
body. And if you increase your levels of omega-3s in your cell membranes, you will have a relative decrease in the sort of inflammation in your body. And so this has been linked, of course, to, for example, heart health. But we also know, now we're on the Norseman program, it's very important in terms of controlling inflammation also in sports and after endurance events. People who train a lot really need to sort of keep their inflammation under control in order to recover fast and to be able to sort of restart their training cycle as soon as possible.
Okay, when we talk about inflammation, is this inflammation in the joints? Is it in the muscles? Is it in the nerves? How does that affect the body in endurance sports like the Norseman Extreme Triathlon?
Well, we can take both joints and muscles. I mean, inflammation in joints and muscles. Omega-3s are incorporated into cells in both muscle tissue and joints. And so in order to sort of keep them functioning the way they should, you have to maintain that balance of omega-3s and omega-6. And that is part of the research that we're doing, is trying to understand at which levels is it optimal to supplement and how much should you supplement in certain conditions. So of course, there's a huge difference between someone who only trains occasionally or who doesn't train at all and someone who is extremely active. And I think the Norseman is a really good model for testing some of the effects of our product because it's such an extreme event. So if you talk about inducing inflammation, well, the Norseman would be a pretty good model for ensuring maximum inflammation after exercise or after that competition. So for us, it's extremely important to understand at what levels of inflammation our the components of our product is most efficient. And so we have both the omega-3 effect, which is really important. You also have the choline effect. So this is a phospholipid product, unlike, for example, fish oil. So this is a phospholipid product, and that means that you're also getting a lot of choline.
Okay.
Choline is a precursor to the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which is incredibly important for muscle function.
Okay.
And multiple studies have shown, for example, in the Boston Marathon, they did a study where you look at the decrease in choline across the marathon.
Yeah.
And they found that there were significant decreases across the Boston Marathon. And also, it's been shown that the more your choline levels decrease, the worse your end time will be.
Yes.
So the second split of your marathon will be a lot worse. The more, or it will be worse, the more the drop is.
That
in
level
choline,
goes
for
down,
example.
yeah.
So you have sort of two components here. You have the omega-3 effect, you have the choline effect, and also the reason it's red, it's because there's astaxanthin in krill oil, which is an antioxidant. And oxidation after extreme exercise is quite heavy.
Yeah.
And that's also part of what's producing the inflammation. So this is sort of, there's a lot of components going into this. So it's a sort of natural all-in-one product. That's what we're thinking anyway. We don't know everything yet,
Yeah.
but it will be really interesting to test this year.
Yep.
We did a pilot last year, and this year we're doing a much more broader study with more hard endpoints on immune function, inflammation, and muscle damage
Yep.
after the Norseman.
At what point, is this like money in the bank, right? So if we take this bottle here in front of us and we take one of these every day for 6 months before Norseman,
Yeah.
you've done research last year, you're going to do more research this year. How much difference will this make to an athlete to take this, you know?
Well, that depends on your starting level.
Yep.
So what we found last year is that even in Norway, your omega-3 levels are sort of in the medium range.
Yep.
We have what we call the omega-3 index. So the omega-3 index is just a measure of the amount of EPA and DHA, the relative amount of EPA and DHA in your red blood cell membranes.
Okay.
So what's shown in previous research is that, for example, if you increase your index from 3% up to around 7%, you reduce your, and this is big population studies, you reduce your risk of instant cardiac death by 90%, which is a lot. So
Okay.
this is a study of 20,000 people.
Yeah.
So if you take sort of that type of study, we don't have a similar study for sports,
Yeah.
but we know that the kinetics are quite slow. So you have to start early.
Yeah.
And it also, of course, depends on the dose.
Yeah.
So we would probably recommend a completely different dose for someone who is going to sort of maximize their recovery levels
Yep.
than we would for someone who is just trying to maintain sort of a normal, healthy life or a healthy inside,
Yeah.
to put it like that.
That was my next question, because a lot of people watching this broadcast, we're going to have the triathletes who are taking part in the Norseman Extreme Triathlon, but we're also going to have fans, we're going to have people who like to run and to swim and to bike, but who don't necessarily do triathlons. So, you know, everyday medical advice to people, is it like, you know, if I add this in the morning, am I doing a good thing? Do I want to add 2 pills? Do I want to add 3? How should I go
Yeah.
about improving this?
Well, so basically, this is very, this is regulated.
Yep.
So depending on the dose, you can say certain things.
Yep.
So within the European Union, you have to have a certain amount of certain compounds in order to be able to state certain health claims.
Okay.
And so for our product, 2 capsules of this will give you claims on, for example, liver function. In terms of choline, it's a really good fat, important for fat transport in
Yep.
the liver. And you also get heart claims from the EPA and DHA. And you get also 2 other choline claims. So you have very sort of regulated what you can say about your product based on scientific evidence.
Yep.
So that's sort of the test here. But of course, we know from bigger studies that just by increasing your levels, you can actually get a really pronounced health effect. But yeah, it's, I mean, in terms of how much you need to raise your level, I think one sort of baseline in terms of sports anyway is from the last year's pilot study, because there we actually supplemented at a certain dose of 4 grams per day. That's 8 capsules a day.
Okay.
After the race. But I can talk a bit more about that later. But that was a sufficient amount to bring back levels after the Norseman.
Okay.
Because that took a toll on some of the omega-3 levels.
That was my next question, actually, and it was a question I'm going to put to you, Jonny. In terms of, I watched some of the coverage of the Boston Marathon, which happened at the weekend, and they were talking
Lovely.
about, it was brilliant, a fantastic
Yeah.
race, and if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you'll find it out there on YouTube. But they talked about one woman who'd run the Boston Marathon, who's, you know, she's an athlete in her spare time, she's no professional, no huge sponsors. They were going, oh, she'll be back to work on Tuesday. And I was going, That's great. But people in the Norseman, they're back to work on Monday straight after. But I'm wondering, if you want to recover, how do you prepare best to do the Norseman and to make it back to work on Monday? Or are you better off just taking the whole week off if you can?
No, I think you should prepare to be back on work on Monday after Norseman.
Yep.
And if you are well prepared before the race, you are trained good, and I think you should be able to work the day after.
Yep. In terms of what Andreas is saying here, he's talking about the krill oil supplement. I'm sold. I'm taking this bottle with me. It's going in my bag on the way home, right? We're going to start that. Thank you very much indeed. But is there anything else that, say now we're, 108 days from now is when the race gets underway, right? Is there anything that people can do in 100? What do they need to be looking at in terms of levels of omega-3? Do they need to be looking at proteins, vitamins, iron, magnesium, zinc, these things? What are the most important things, especially when it comes to the swimming? What's going to help them most when they hit the water at 5 o'clock in the morning?
I think if it depends on how your diet is.
Yep.
So if you have a good diet, very different with you eat fish and you eat a different kind of nutrition you need,
yep,
the need for supplements are very low.
Yep.
But if you are not good to eat all that thing, then I think you need to look for supplements.
Yep.
Yeah. So especially if you eat little fish, you may need supplements of omega-3.
Yep. Andreas?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So, of course, if you have a very balanced diet, you're in a good position. You will probably get everything you need. The thing with athletes, of course, is that they probably burn off more than other people. So you have to be especially conscious about what you eat. And also what we see is that in a lot of athletes, for example, for omega-3s, the levels are very low and across the world. So we know that people aren't eating enough fish. It's just the way it is. And so in that case, supplementation is very important. But of course, if you eat fish every day, you don't need krill.
Yeah. But how many times a week, for a balanced diet, should you eat fish? I mean, is it because...
Well, the recommended is 2 to 3 times
2 to 3 times a week, okay.
But of course, if you have a very high activity level, you should probably eat more.
Yeah.
So fish is incorporated very well into your cells. It's also phospholipids, just like krill oil. Fish oil, on the other hand, is not phospholipids. It's triglycerides. So that's burnt off probably a little bit faster.
Okay.
But definitely try to eat as much fish as you can. And if you need to, then you supplement.
Yeah. So the krill oil is kind of a superfood, kind of like, we talk about blueberries and these things as well,
I don't know about superfood, but it's an effective... it's at the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah.
So it's got to be good for something. And that was sort of like the initial questions, like, we have this krill, it's at the bottom of the food chain. It has to be really good.
Yeah.
And then it turns out it is really good.
Yep.
Surprise, surprise. Yep. So it has some very fundamental components for life in it, and it seems to be working really well. I mean, there's a lot of studies on krill oil and on omega-3s, and it's an extremely sort of potent supplement.
Yep. I'm going to have a quick look at my director here and see. We've been talking a lot about cold water swimming here, and we might have a video of some of the swimming from last year, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about and the cold in the water. Good morning and welcome to Gaustablikk here in Norway, where we are all set to bring you the 2017 Norseman Extreme Triathlon, the ultimate triathlon here on the face of the earth. We're ready to bring you all the action and all the drama from what happens out there today. This is the start of the 2017 Norseman, the 15th year in a row that this race is being held. And there goes the horn and they're off. You can see everybody hitting the crawl straight away. Nobody's going to be hanging around here. There are no breaststrokers here, no backstrokers here. And they're going hell for leather to begin with, getting into a smooth stroke as quickly as they can. The athletes are going to have to be prepared for pretty much everything a triathlon course can throw at them in terms of gradient, in terms of weather, in terms of temperature. So it's a hugely challenging, yet I'm sure hugely enjoyable course. There we go. That'll give you some flavour of what is awaiting the athletes 108 days from now at 5 a.m. They'll get a cold shower from Jorgen, then they will be in the water. Some of the athletes that we saw in that clip took part in the research that has been done into cold water swimming. We're not going to worry about that too much now. I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, what research are you doing this year? What do you expect to learn from this year's 2018 Norseman, Andreas? What are you looking for there?
Okay, so basically we did a pilot last year involving 50 of the athletes in the Norseman. And what we looked at there is, first of all, we looked at their omega-3 levels prior to the race.
Okay, was this blood tests? Or
that was blood tests.
Okay.
So we looked at the amount of EPA and DHA in their red blood cells.
Yep.
And so we did not supplement. So we just looked at the omega-3 levels to try and see if there was any trend in how they performed during the race, how much illness they had experienced prior to the race, and also if there would be any effect on the sort of rate of recovery after the race.
Yep.
And probably the most important or most interesting finding that we had is that when we just split the sample in half, so those with relatively higher omega-3 levels compared to those with relatively lower, so just split it in half, at around 6%, which is sort of a medium level, I'd say. Not too bad, but a medium level. We split it there, and then we found that in the 4 weeks after the race, so we asked these people to fill out questionnaires after the race, and then they would tell us how much they exercised and how intensely they exercised, and also if they experienced any problems with sleep, all sorts of questions related to their recovery. So basically, one of the more interesting findings is that we found a very accelerated recovery rate in terms of the intensity in the people that had relatively higher indexes. And sort of that is, we don't know why. We do know that omega-3 levels were affected in the time after the race. And that can be indicative also that there is some sort of relationship here between how well you had your level when you started and actually how well you recovered after the race. And we did manage to supplement that level back up after the race again. So we had the weeks 1 to 5, and then we had weeks 5 to 10. So we supplemented in weeks 5 to 10. And we had to supplement pretty heavily to get the omega-3 levels back into the baseline again. So basically there's something happening here. And there seems to be a benefit of higher levels. But we don't know why. So this year, we're bringing out the big guns. So this year, we're basically doing a lot more biomarkers. That's what we're doing. So last year, it was very subjective in terms of how much did you train, how intense was your training, how much sleep did you get, those sorts of things. Now we're going to look at actually biomarkers, so taking blood samples to look at the amount of inflammation, immune responses, and muscle damage before the race, just after the race, and then 1 day after the race. So that will give us a very nice temporal gradient, trying to sort of pick apart a little bit what's happening to these athletes during the race and just after the race. So this is one thing is the effect of omega-3s, another thing is the effect of the Norseman. So this is really interesting basic research as well, because this is such an extreme setting that not many people have done this before, not in this type of setting. So it will be really interesting, and it's also planned to do the Oslo Triathlon the weekend after. So in that case, we can compare these results across the sort of normal distance triathlon and the extreme distance triathlon.
Seems we've learned a lot, but there's an awful lot more to learn there. Somebody who wants to learn something out there is Roy Selland, who has posted a question for Jonny there. He says, can you say something about fish oils as one of several risk factors for SIPE? Now, I'm not sure I know what SIPE is.
SIPE is, that stands for swim-induced lung edema. So that's a condition that sometimes happens during triathlon and swimming and diving. The reason for this CPA is not really known. It sometimes said that the CPA is like a perfect storm. You had to have a lot of different risk factors to achieve it. And there are some studies indicating that if you If you use a wetsuit, that increases the risk of SIPA.
Yep.
If you have diabetes, if you have hypertension,
Yep.
if you go for a long swim, it's more dangerous than a short swim. And it's also one of the risk factors is actually fish oil.
Yeah.
It seems to increase the risk around 3 times compared to not using fish oils. But as I said, the reason, the exact reason why you get SIPA is not known yet. And the numbers are very small. So I think a lot of more research needs to be done there. I don't think you should worry about using omega-3 or fish oils when it comes to SIPA.
Yeah, it seems that risk is one thing, but there's no established causality there.
No,
that this
and it's
these.
a very seldom. There are, I think the prevalence is about 1.4% when you do a triathlon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your own research this year. Will you be taking part in the race this year?
I will do the crew race this year, the week before.
Yeah.
And I will work in the safety team together with Jorgen, and I will also be leading this research program. So
what will you be looking out for? What do you want to find
We will
out?
continue the research we have done, as we talked about with Jorgen's PhD project. So we will take these blood samples, especially on the biomarkers. Some of the if you get hurt and come to a hospital, they take blood samples of you when you come in to see if you have suffered from a heart attack or your muscle damage or kidney failure or whatever it is.
Yep.
We have seen from the study in 2016 when we took blood samples that it was huge elevation of those biomarkers.
Yeah.
So if you get to the hospital, you look really, really ill.
Yeah.
And we actually want to know more about what's normal after a race like Norseman. So we want to continue that, as Andreas said. And we also want to measure core temperature during the whole race in about 20 athletes. And that's what we did last year. And we surprisingly, we could see that the core temperature were dropping even when biking downhills in the cold air at the mountains. So it's going to be very interesting to get more information about the core temperature in the whole race. So we'll do that together with Aker BioMarine, and also it's funded by Norseman organization.
There you go. This is simply the most extreme triathlon in the world. You learn amazing things in the most extreme circumstances. I'd like to say thanks to Jonny. I'd like to say thanks to Andreas. I'd like to say thanks to Jorgen. I'd like to say thanks to you at home for watching. If you're going to be taking part, take your krill oil, check out your wetsuit. If you're going to be watching, take your krill oil too. Get up early, 5 o'clock in the morning, 108 days from now, when we will be bringing you the Norseman live. My name is Philip O'Connor. It's all going down in Eidfjord and Gaustablik this summer.